Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is first day after Maseches Chagiga. So we make our way through Shas. So this is the last parak, last Masechet to my knowledge in Moed. So we're discussing the karbanos that brought the Chagiga. So let's see what's going on. Zok Gemara. We left off top of Beis Amud Aleph, right? First word of the line, right? First word, last word, right? The line, right? Right? Nai Mishnah, Nai Perek, Nai Masechta. Hakol chayavin b'riyah chutz mecher sheit v'kat. All are required in the riyah, the carbon riyah. So Rashi says, right? There's a special mitzvah by riyah. Top Rashi, Hakol chayavin b'riyah b'mitzvahs riyahs kol zechorcha shetzrichim liyisraos be'azar bereg. Right? That they have to go and be seen during the holiday, right? So there's a mitzvah, special mitzvah, and we're going to assume that a carbon is brought to be seen during the regal, and one brings a carbon, an olam, olas riyah. So everyone is required to go ahead and be seen during the regal, during the three regalim, except for a cheresh. Cheresh is someone who is a deaf mute, right? The Gemara will discuss, right, what exactly a cheresh is. Shaita, a person who doesn't have the not full lacking capacity, right? My kid, I actually he's called special needs. I said, I don't know, it's called special needs. We call it shaita because he just said that. It's called So I guess that was said over them. Shaita is someone who doesn't have full capacity, right? Deranged. The cotton or a minor, but tumtum androgynous. Right, or a tumtum, a person that lacks either one, or is not clear as to which gender he is, or androgynous, or a person who is both male and female.
More than half the population, like the international.
But all right, so tumtum, the androgynous. Morning, we just started. The nashim and women, right? They're also pater from carbon riyah. The avodim shenim meshachrarim, and avodim and slaves, right, and servants that were not freed by their masters. The hachiger, and one who is lame, right? What a person, right? We'll soon see what a chiger is. He can't necessarily walk. Basuma, lame, right? A blind person. Bahachayla, and a sick person. V'hazakeh, and also a sick person and an elderly, right? For difficult to make the voyage. And also somebody who can't go ahead and go up on his own feet. And Ezu katan, what is a katan? Says Beis Shammai. It's a child of a young age who is too young to go ahead and basically travel on their father's shoulders, right? So if you think about it, right, a 5 month, too young, right? Yeah. But then they're chayv because you're walking, right? So let's say a baby is 3 months old. So a baby that's 3 months old is too young to ride on the father's shoulders, right? Baby can't sit. Maybe a child who's 2 years old, or maybe such a child. So that was a bit of Beis Shammai. No, a little different. It has to be a child who's a little older, right? Beis Hillel says it's a little more makel, a little older, a child who can walk, holding his father's hand to Shalayim, maybe 4 or 5. Shinamar. Right. Well, since the Chamin, right? So it says Shinamar. So it says Shalosh Regalim, right? It says Shalosh Regalim. Hint: Regel. Regel is a leg. Walking. It's involved with walking, right?
That's the root,
right.
Well, it's hard going up the hill.
Sorry. So these, right? So right, as Rashi says, we want to say chayiv. So the Torah is never mechayiv a cotton to do a mitzvah. If you look at the first Rashi of the skinny lines of Ezu Katav Chulei, it says about Mikan Veilach. So here, af b'sheina chayiv in a Torah, even though it's chayiv in the Doraisa, nevertheless, right? Last place, right in the Torah, itil chachamim al abi bal ima lechan mitzvahs. Right? The chachamim were made it on the parents to be mechanic. Then, right? It's a big machlokes in terms of the mitzvah of chinuch, in terms of whether it goes to the parents, how that works, and necessarily in terms of what type of obligations, but nevertheless, so that what you're talking here is not a deraisa, right? Certainly not deraisa by a katan, but any katan is already old enough for the age to be able to walk, according to Beis Hillel, or to at least ride on his father's shoulders, according to Beis Shammai. The father is obligated to go ahead and bring them for the olas riyah on regular. Beis Shammai yoimrim haria shtei kesef v'achiga ma kesef. Beis Shammai says the riyah is the more expensive one. That's 2 ma kesef, which is 2 ma kesef. I think is a third of a dinar. Right, 1 ma is a sixth, so it's a third. Right, and the chagiga is only 1 ma kesef, which would be a sixth. And Beis Hillel, Beis Hillel says opposite. Haria ma kesef. The riyah is the cheaper one. The chagiga shtei kesef. The chagiga was one who's required to go there and celebrate shlamim. Chagiga is the shlamim, right? That person, the chayavim, the yachid, to go ahead and bring on the regel, right? So the person is chayav to go ahead and bring a chagiga, to bring a shlamim on the regel. We call that the chagiga. So that's the chagiga. So that was the machlokes. That's which is more expensive. Beis Hillel says the chagiga is more expensive, and Beis Shammai says the olas riyah is more expensive. Fine. That was the Mishnah. Zok the Gemara. So it says hakol lasuye mai. What does hakol come to include? Everybody, right? Everybody's obligated to do this, and then they have a whole bunch of lists of people, right? You know, or people who are not. So assuming everybody else. So who does hakol come to include? Hakol lasuye mai. Who does that come to include? Often the hakol is inclusive, right? Somebody you might not have thought would be obligated to be the riyah, he's also obligated. So who is that? So let's say a person was owned by 2 different people, whether it was 2 brothers who inherited from their father, or let's say it's 2 business partners that they bought some avodim together, and then one of them says, you know what, I'm done. My half I freed. So he gave his a get shichur to his eved, and the other guy still owns his eved. So he's half and half. So so such a person, right? We said an eved who's not freed is pater. That was what we said in the Mishnah. So over here, if he's half and half, he's also chayiv. But according to Ravina, and we'll soon see this machlokes, who says that a person who is half, right? In other words, one of his masters freed him, so therefore half of him is free, and the other half is not still obligated to go ahead and work for his, his master, right? So what does Hakol come to include? Because he holds such a person is pater from the riyah. You have to be completely free to bring the olas riyah. To include a person who was lame on day 1, and basically he got healed on day 2. So day 1, we saw he was unable to walk, right? He was whatever it was. He was unable to walk because he was injured. He was considered to be a lame and therefore pater. Day 2, he was already good. So therefore, such a person, you might think maybe since day 1, right? He's pater, so he's pater throughout the chag. And so he says, no, to include such a person, if he heals on day 2, now you're obligated to go. So this works out well, according to machlokes, we'll see later on, regarding when a tashlumin, when one misses the first day, so the next day is a tashlumin for that. Now the question is, on day 3, right? Is day 3 a tashlumin for day 2, or is day 3 a tashlumin for day 1? And 4 is for day 1, and 5 is for day 1. Is it all connected to day 1? Because I didn't bring in day 1, I still have time to go ahead and bring in day 1. Or is each day its own opportunity to go ahead and bring it for that day?
About Shavuos, just like we have a korban that we can bring 7 days.
Right. So even Shavuos you have afterwards. Right. You can bring it afterwards. Right. So he says, but according to the opinion, also tashlumin, everything is linked to day 1. And if day 1 I was pater, that means even afterwards, even if I healed, right? Even if the person who was lame healed, he's still not obligated because everything is connected to day 1. And day 1 he was pater because he was unable to walk. So who does that call come to include? Right? To include a person who is blind in one eye. So a person who's blind in one eye is obligated to go ahead and bring a riyah. Where is it? It's not like this, like the following author of this price. The tiny one, Rabbi Yochanan and Ben Davayomer, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda says Rabbi Yehuda. Sum ba'achas meinov pater min riyah. A person who's blind in one eye, he can only see out one eye. He's pater from bringing the riyah, from coming for all this riyah. Shinamar, the pasuk says. It says yira. Or say or yira yira kederch sheba, right? Sheba aliras, right? Kach. So right. So in other words, that it says over there the pasuk, right? The pasuk over there says shlosh pamim b'shana yeira'eh kol zechurcha el panei ha'adon. Right. So it says for 3 days, 3 times a person during the year, a person should be seen is seen by Hashem, right? Here goes zechurcha panei Hashem, right? They'll be seen by Hashem. So you're kadach shabaliros. So kach baliros. So it was just like he sees, so too he's seen. Just like one sees with two eyes, so too when he will be seen, right? By so too when it will be seen by two eyes. So Kadosh Baruch Hu sees with two eyes, right? So you see with two eyes when they come there. So too HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be seen by two eyes. Therefore, according to this Tana, a person who does not have two eyes, he can only see out of one eye. Such a person, right, is patur because Hashem won't be seen by him with two eyes. Therefore, he's patur to go ahead and bring the riyah. V'boy sema, or I can give you another teretz. Really is like we originally said. Our first teretz was Hakol came to include a person who's half and half, right? He was owned by two partners. One of them freed him. The other one says, "No, you're still working for me," right? And I said, "I Ravina is all this." So loy kasha. One is basically the first teaching, right? We'll soon see of Beis Hillel, and the other one is the Mishnah Achrona. We'll soon see that Beis Hillel was chayzer. Where the Tanai we learn in a Mishnah, so a person who is half a slave because one of his masters freed him, the other one still is working him, he owns him. So what does he do? Beis Hillel says simple. Monday you work for your master. Tuesday is your day off. You work for yourself. Wednesday you work for your master. You just switch off days. Very simple. Half and half. 50% of the time here, 50% of the time here. No problem. Problem solved. You can remain who you are, right? And therefore, such a person will be patur. So Amr Lehem Beis Shammai says Beis Shammai. Back to him. Turn the page. So Tikantem is Ravo. Okay, you very nice. You've settled this. You've settled the issue of his work. Right, his work in terms of 50% here, 50% here, the time that makes sense. However, right, because you've not fixed him. In other words, what's this person going to do? Lisa shifcha. If he's going to go ahead and marry a shifcha, in other words, that's who Eved is allowed to go ahead and marry a shifcha. And right, he can't do that because he can't marry because half of him is free. Right, and a person who's free cannot go ahead and marry the shivcha. And Baskarin Yachli can't go ahead and marry Baskarin. Why? Because he's owned by half of him is owned by master. So Libata. Okay, so what are you going to say? So okay, marry nobody, live by yourself. But the world was created for promotion. I'm not supposed to says So it is not a person should not go ahead and sit, doing nothing. Should not live by himself. He should go ahead and take a woman and have children, right? He should not go ahead and sit by himself. So we can't allow him. Say, the answer can't be okay. You can't get married. Rather, for Tikkun Olam, right, in order for go ahead and fix the situation, we force the master to go ahead and free and give him a get shikhr to go ahead and free his slave and pay him half the money that he was worth because he's only owns half of him, and he goes free. The chazru Beis Hillel laharis kedivrei Beis Shammai, and Beis Hillel is chayzer. So now Beis Hillel is chayzer. Beis Hillel basically says a person who's half and half, we obligate him to become free. If we obligate him to become free, therefore he's going to be chayiv the riyah, right? Before we obligated him, he was half and half, and therefore he was patur. And that was what Ravina was learned then. Therefore, Ravina says, no, that such a person is patur. Therefore, Hakol can't include that. But once once Beis Hillel was chayzer to Beis Shammai, then we can say a person's half-half, even though right now he's half-half. He's going to be, we forced the master, he's getting out, and therefore he's obligated in
Mishnah was like the Mishnah Rishona, and Ravina's teaching was like the Mishnah.
Right. Very good. So now, next, so two dots, chutz becheresh v'katan. So Ktani cheresh duma d'shoyta v'katan. So it says cheresh, right? We first touched it as a person who's deaf and mute, right? Just like a person who is a shayt, who's deranged, right? And is a minor that they don't have das. So too must be dealing with a cheresh, the lav barder, who's not a barder. The kamash malon, and it comes to teach us. Like we learn in another this following Mishnah. It says cheresh shadibra chachamim b'chol makom she'ena shomei bein medaber. That which we say cheresh in other places we'll come and talk about is this referring to somebody who's eina shomea ve'eina medaber, does not hear, a deaf mute who does not hear and he does not speak.
So re'iyah is not just necessarily re'iyah. Cheresh, right, has the re'iyah dimension, but doesn't have shmiya.
Which one?
The cheresh, the deaf.
Right. Yeah.
When he goes to Yerushalayim, he has the re'iyah, but he's patur here.
Correct,
So the
because
question
he's not a bardas. Because a person who can't communicate, he can't speak or hear, is not considered.
So the
Mishnah here
meaning
learns
here-
he's not a bardas.
So the meaning is not just necessarily, that's what I'm getting, it's not necessarily just to see it physically.
Right, correct.
It's the whole
Right.
experience,
Exactly.
full experience.
And he's no different than a
of
katan,
Rabbi.
a minor,
Right.
that a boy who's 4 years old. So he says, "Veina medaber, ha medaber veina shomea." But however, according to this Mishnah, right, a person who speaks but he can't hear, or shomea, he can hear veina medaber but he can't speak, he's a mute. Chayiv, he is chayiv. And Tanina laha, we also learned this. The Tana Rabbanan, ha medaber veina shomea, a person who can go ahead and speak, right, but he can't hear. Zehu cheresh, basically a person who can't hear, right? He's eno shomea. He's called a deaf person, and shomea veina medaber. And the one who can hear but he can't talk, so that's a mute. And zev and those two people, a person who can hear but not speak, or speak but cannot hear, those two people are considered to be pikechim. Those two people are considered to be people who are normal, who are mentally, who are bardas. They're mentally competent to make decisions and have bardas. Very good. Where do you see that a person who talks but he just can't hear is still called a cheresh? Or shemei ve'ein medaber ze'ilim, this person is mute. The Chassidus says, "V'ani kecheresh lo yashma u'ki'ileim lo yiftach piv." Right, and I am like a cheresh, right, who can't hear. Right, just as he can't hear doesn't say he can't speak. So we see a person who can't hear is called a cheresh. And like an ilaim, who doesn't open his mouth, meaning he is a mute. Or you can say, people say, ishtakil milile, right? He's quiet from his words, ishtakil milile. So it comes from the word ilaim, right? The aleph, the first word, the lamed of the last letter, and then the first word, milile. So ilaim comes from there, it comes from basically a shortening of ishtakil milile. Right? He's quiet, right? He takes away his words. Person who's taking away words, he is considered to be a mute. Fine. We say, however, a person who is a bardas, he can talk but he can't hear, or he can hear, he can't talk. He is chayiv for the other three. I've got time to learn a price. We have another price different than what we just learned till now. That a person who talks but can't hear, or hear and he can't talk, he's pater. And I'm Ravina v'itema the Rava. No, it's missing a part. This is how it should be read. Hakol chayav in the Ria uvesimcha. Everyone is chayav in the Ria and also the simcha, right? Special mitzvah is shlam simcha. Person coming every day to be misamech, to have the basar, right? They eat meat, the kachim, right? They eat meat during the holiday, so that's called the shlam simcha. So he says, Beria v'simcha chutz micheresh hamadaber ve'in shemea and shemea ve'in medaber. Shapater minaria, except for a person who's deaf, knows he can speak but can't hear, or he can hear and cannot speak, that he is pater from the ria. The afal pisha pater minaria, even though he's pater minaria, chayiv v'simcha. He is chayiv v'simcha. So that which we said, right? A person obligated if he's only right, if he can hear, or if he can talk, right? Such a person is really pater from the ria, but he's chayiv and simcha. But a person who can't do either, he can't hear or he can't talk. The shoyta, and also a shoyta person who's a shoyta, the range, the cotton, and a minor. Pater af min simcha. That person is pater even from the shami simcha. Since they are normally pater from any other mitzvahs that are written in the Torah.
We're talking about Chaim and Pater. We're talking about the korban specifically.
Yes.
Not about the actual Re'iyah being there, right?
Right. So, Tanya Me'achim, we learn Hakol Chayavim B'Riya U'V'Simcha Chutz Mecheresh Hamadaber Ve'eno Shameya. So everyone is obligated in the Riya and the Simcha except for a Cheresh, right? A deaf person who talks but he can't hear, or he hears and he cannot talk. Shaptur Min Riya. Those are pater from the Riya. The Afal Pishat pater Min Riya, and even though they are pater from the Riya, Chayiv, like we just saw earlier, Chayiv B'Simcha. They're Chayiv in the Shami Simcha. Right, the Asheino lo shameya, right? Because over there it says l'smach v'chagecha, right? So we said simcha, right? It's for everybody, right? The Asheino lo shameya v'lo midaber v'shoita v'katan, and all person. However, he can't hear and can't talk, or a shoita or a katan. Patrim af mina simcha. They are part of the simcha. Hoyop patrim komas hamos b'Torah. Since they're normally pater from all of the Torah, they'll also be pater even in the case of the simcha, and we don't say v'samach v'chagecha applies to them. All right, stop here.
6:45.